Now that we have access to our promotional products within our front end, we can actually build out the carousel that we want to use to display them. We had just installed a third-party library in the last video to help us do this, so let's jump on over to the code editor and get started. The first thing that we should do here, and I'm inside of promotionalproducts.js, is let's import some more of the components that we'll need to build this out. Let's go ahead and import the button component from Material UI core button. We'll import the icon button from Material UI. And then let's import the carousel from React-Spring-3D-Carousel. Oops, make sure that's a lowercase. And then let's import CLSX, which we'll talk about in just a minute, but this is going to allow us to conditionally apply class names. It's a really powerful library, and it's included with Material UI, so we don't have to install anything extra. This will be from CLSX. And then let's also go ahead and underneath our import for the use static query, let's import the make styles from at material-UI/core/styles. Now we can come under here and above our function, create our constant of use styles equal to the make styles called, and we'll pass that a function that's going to receive our theme, and we'll have that automatically return our style object. Now we can come up above our const of data and create our const of classes equal to use styles. All right, let's also come up and let's also import the promo adornment, which is going to be our background image, from up directory images/promo adornment.svg. And then we'll also import explore from images/explore.svg. And that'll be our explore button icon. So to start off, let's go ahead and come down, and instead of returning this div here, which is just a placeholder, let's go ahead and delete that and make this a multi-line statement. And let's create a grid container for the entire thing. And if you remember from the overview we said we would use justify of space between to get our items, the carousel on the left and the description on the right, to be spaced out between one another, or to have space in between them rather. And then also the align items prop of center to get them in the middle of the background image. To test this out, we can go ahead and create a grid item here, and we'll just put the text carousel inside of there. And then another grid item with the text description. And now let's go ahead and add the background image to the main grid with a classes prop of the root class on this grid, and we'll call it classes.mainContainer. All right, we can get rid of our console log data, although let's actually leave it just for now so we can remember the structure of that data. And let's come up to our style object and create our main container class. So here, to set a background image, we'll go ahead and set the background image property, and then we'll use backticks for this because we need to specify the CSS URL function, but pass in using a $sign and braces to inject the promo adornment that we have imported. Then we need a few other properties to make sure it appears correctly. So let's go ahead and set the background position, and we'll set this to top. And that will mean that it starts at the very top of the image, allowing us to specify the height and just cut off the bottom part to get the height that we want. Another common property for this is center, if you just want it to be centered, but since this is a rather large image, we'll use top so that we can correctly specify the height that we want without cutting off the important part at the beginning. So then we'll also add a background size of cover, and this makes sure that the background image covers the whole area that we're giving it instead of cropping to a certain size. And then we'll go ahead and also add the background repeat of no repeat to make sure that it doesn't fill any extra space with a repeated version of the image. So putting 2 or 3 of the image to make sure it takes up the space. We'll use no repeat and cover to make sure that just the one image takes up and expands to fill the space available to it. These are basically just the same properties you'll use anytime setting a background image, so it's a good thing to just get these in your head. Now I'm also going to set a width here of 100% and then a specified height of 70 rem. Let's go ahead and save this and flip back on over to the browser and check that out. We now have the image that we had wanted, and we see that we correctly have the carousel text and description text here appearing close to the middle of it and with the expected space in between them. Now the reason it doesn't look exactly like it's in the middle here is because the image is so tall and this part on the left is higher than this part on the right. So we'll use some padding to actually push those down a little bit. All right, and then we'll also use some padding to make sure that they're not sitting directly on the edges like that. So let's flip back on over. Let's also add a padding left of 10 rem, a padding right of 10 rem, and a padding top of 30 rem, and a padding bottom of 30 rem as well. Let's go ahead and save that and flip back on over. And we see that they now have moved correctly in from the sides. They're still not exactly where I'd want them at the beginning. So let's actually reduce the padding bottom to just 10 and leave the padding top of 30. And now I think that looks much better to where I would want them. Now we could actually shorthand this to, instead of specifying all of these out by themselves, we could set a 1 padding property and then specify the top padding of 30 rem, the right padding of 10 rem, the bottom padding of 10 rem, and then the left padding of 10 rem. And now we should be able to delete all of those and save, and it should appear the same, which we do see. Now, one thing you may have noticed here is that as we scroll, our header is actually overlapping or being overlapped by the content here, and that doesn't create a very good look. And in some applications, you may want the header to just always follow the scrolling like this. But in our application, I'm actually going ahead and want that to stay just at the top. So we can do that if we go over to our header.js, and on the app bar component, on our app bar component here, let's add a position prop of static. If we go ahead and save that and then flip back on over to the browser, we see that as we scroll, the header remains at the top. So now let's go ahead and start building out our carousel. Let's flip back on over, and we've already imported the carousel component that we're going to need. So let's go ahead and instead of the carousel text, let's actually render the carousel component. And this is going to expect 2 props that we'll use to set this up. The first is the slides prop, and this will be the actual slides that we want to be displayed. And then a go to slide prop, where we can set the index of the slide that we want to be appearing first. Then if this prop is changed, that'll go ahead and move us to the appropriate slide. So we'll go ahead and make this a self-closing tag. And instead of just hard coding in a specific slide, we'll need to store this in a piece of state so that whenever we change that piece of state, it'll cause a re-render, which will cause the slides to change. So let's go up to the top, and next to our import for React, let's destructure out the use state hook that we've used before. And now we can come down, and under constant of classes, we can create a constant of the selected slide, and set, make sure comma, and set selected slide to give us the function to change that value, and set that equal to our use state function, and let's give it a default of 0. Now we can come down and we'll set goToSlide equal to our selected slide. Now the carousel, the slides prop, is going to expect our slides as the form of an array of objects with the properties key, content, and optionally an onClick, but we'll set that up a little bit differently as you'll see in just a second. But most importantly, we need the key property and the content property, and content is the actual JSX element that we want to be appearing as our carousel. So we'll set this equal to slides, And now we'll come up and underneath our query for our data, let's go ahead and create a constant of slides. Or actually, let's make this a variable and we'll set this equal to an empty array. Now what we'll do is we'll go through our data. So we'll take our data, and remember this is data, and if we open up the console, it's data.allstrappyproduct.edges, and then that's our array. So we'll take the data.allstrappyproduct.edges and then map over that to get each individual product. We'll open up the arrow function, and we can actually, out of the product, we can destructure out the node property so that we can just work with that directly. So now we have the inside of our edges, each node, and then we can access node.name, strappy ID, and the other properties that we'll need. So if we flip back on over, let's actually wait on this. We'll do this in a next video. We'll take a little break, so we'll hold off on that. But what we can do real quick to just test this out is let's create in our slides, let's create a object with the key of 1 and then the content, and we'll set this equal to just a div with the text. Make sure to get the closing tag, first slide. Okay, and now let's go ahead and let's copy this object, paste it 2 more times, set the key here of 2, key here of 3, and then this will be the second slide and the third slide. Okay, let's go ahead and save that. So now we have the key and the content, and we're passing these slides to the carousel component. So if we go ahead and check the browser, well, we can see they're kind of tiny over here. I'll zoom the page in so that we can see that a little better. Keep zooming in. So you can see that it is tiny since it's just text, but you can see the effect that we have the first slide being bolded and then the second and third slides being opaque behind it, just like we want for our products from the design. If I go ahead and flip back to the code and manually come up and change our state to the second slide, I'm going to go ahead and save it and flip back on quickly to the browser so we can see it actually change. So I'm going to save it and flip back on over. Actually, instead of changing it here, let's just manually go ahead and put in the slide in the go-to slide prop. Let's just pass in the 2, and we can save that and flip back on over, and we can see the carousel effect where it moves to the next slide. So we can see that it is working. I'm going to go ahead and reset the zoom here, and let's go ahead and take a break and continue building this out in the next video.